episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Andrew?
I'm Tori.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over a work of zombie fiction. Zombie short story fiction, to be exact. And the story that we're going to be talking about is Eat Me
I would
by
never do such a thing.
Robert McCammon, which is from... It's featured in this collection, Zombies Encounters with the Hungry Dead. And this was edited and put together by John Skip. And it was interesting that he was impressed and fascinated by this piece, especially since the nature of a work like this is often heavily frowned upon. Andrew, you have a discussion starter?
Yeah, I do. It's a great allegorical horror comedy. I was first going to ask if what you first found this under, but my question for this would be, where do you find the setting? Is it a post-apocalyptic now, like terrestrial, or is it like a different realm that the story takes place?
I'm
Look at
very.
it.
Mars.
Because I wasn't like really clear. On
I
where
thought it took place in I could totally see it as like Chicago or
Yeah, that's-
New York or
God.
They
something
called it
like
a
that.
cemetery, but
Yeah.
they
There's
both
very
lived in
real
apartments.
locations, but yeah.
Any major city. God
But
forbid.
I-
The very last line, which gets me, that made me think that this was somewhere totally different. Because the boy notices the mangled
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
corpse
because they
as,
were
as of
they were
something
eating one
from
another.
the
Just-
dead
yeah.
realm.
See, this is what I thought was that it was explained. There was no definite time given, like no date or anything like that. I thought it was the apocalypse. I thought this was post-apocalypse. If
That
this
was my
makes any
first
sense,
impression.
was
Yeah.
that this is after the apocalyptic event happened. This is the life, so to speak, the existence that happened after it. So it's
How would
kind
there
of-
be life?
They break a
after
lot of rules.
That's
though,
why I said air
because,
quote. Well,
rules
air
in
quote.
quotation marks because
Ah. Pudding.
we think that these are zombies because they're decaying dead people walking, and yet they have the ability to think of in one retrospect they have the ability to think about something,
Survival.
but on the other hand they're thinking about they're thinking in a different way. They're not
Yeah.
thinking. They're thinking about eating people in a sexual manner.
Wait, what? Oh dear God.
Yeah, that's what gave me that feeling of the post-apocalypse, is that we've kind of created a semblance of a life. We've created, okay, so this infection kind of wiped out the human race, and those that are left are the ones that are reanimated corpses. So there's shells of people living in the shells of the society that we used to have. So when I read it, I kind of felt like this was like years and years and years and years and years in the future after that happened.
That's
So
what I thought too.
that's the decay of life happened in such a way that now almost everything is nigh recognizable. So that way you have that feeling of it being like a cemetery, because all that's left is really just decay and death.
And it's just this question of when does love die with it? That's
Yeah,
the
so-
question.
Love can
Crisp.
never die.
And that, Yeah. I think,
Yeah, this
Funnily
whole thing
named
is
asks
just chock
himself.
full of puns.
Mhm.
This story, I thought what made this story great is just, it was non-stop puns. It's like
I love
a
puns.
question gnawed at him
yeah,
at
just
day and night, and it's like the open
itched
maw
at the
of
fact
time.
of like he felt the
It's
question
like
itch at the back
yeah.
of his head and stuff like that, and just I think I went researching this.
It puts
found
you into the
piece.
moment, though.
Yeah, and it becomes literal, and then you just sit there like, oh, is that how, like, when you think about it, like, the thing that you're talking about, the puns become actual literal things that happen, and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
McCammon is
love
brilliant.
literally
Take pause,
consumed
yeah.
them.
Yes,
You know?
yes,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
very interesting. So I have no idea what to say about this, because it's
Me
just one of
either.
those, like, I went looking for it on the list when you gave out the list, and I was like, oh, okay, I found it, and I read it, and I just remember sitting. I wasn't even sitting. I was standing at my counter in my kitchen, read the entire thing, and then just kind of stopped and like what the hell? Like, I didn't know what I just
Were you
read.
not? Were you not hungry afterward?
Well, that nothing. I don't think so.
I first
think
came across this story because a friend of mine had an interest in zombies, and he had this whole collection. I wanted to look through it, and the same thing. A story called Eat Me by an author that I recognized because I bought one of his books at Columbus Farmers Market. The two just came together to the point that I had to check it out for myself, and then I ended up buying this collection, which is an updated version of the collection that he had.
I see Ray Bradbury on there. So
Yeah, he contributed a story called The Emissary.
This is my question that I have for y'all. Do you think this is a horror story or a love story?
Oh, you have that?
I don't. I think
Yeah.
it's probably.
Does this count as is it a love story set in a horrific space, or is it a horror story set in a romantic plot?
That's the thing about
It is a love
McCammon.
story.
Robert McCammon did not want to be confined under any particular genre, and people, because his works had a horrific feel to them, he was often deemed.
horrific feel to it, doesn't ever.
He was frequently deemed as a horror writer, and he was so turned off by that he stopped writing for a period of time.
they found
And-
a hopeless place.
But what I would consider this, I think one can make the argument that it is a little bit historical. A historical
I can see
romance, because
Okay.
I can see
if
that.
it's historical in the way that this is post-apocalyptic, that this is going to be the way, will love have a place in the post-apocalypse? And
It's history that hasn't happened yet. But
It's a
It's
bit-
alternative history.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's alternative
fantastical.
history. Yeah,
but
yes.
that's another interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
because I think if anything, he wanted his works to be viewed in a historical kind of way, or probably still does, because he went back. He's writing again.
I especially love the way that the horror element was introduced. Was that you were given these pieces? Is this person kind of starts talking about the world he lives in is decayed, and then talking about rats on the street, and then all of a sudden there's like this emaciated individual who he sees on the street, and then all of a sudden it's explained that this emaciated individual has rats in him, and so it's kind of the scope is built slowly, and you're kind of like you're wading into like a cool lake, so that it's not a shock all at once. So by the time you get to the like, what is it? A rave?
Oh, yeah,
the
there's like a-
nightclub. The
Yeah,
nightclub.
yeah.
Where there's all the corpse there, like losing body parts because they're just
Yeah.
trying to lose themselves
Yeah.
into the music. It's kind of almost like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see it. Like he warms you up to it, and it's a gradual introduction to it, and I think that's. It was a very different take on this like otherwise horrific situation.
It was interesting the kind of person Jim Crisp was. He loved classical music, and
Yeah.
he was a man. He was a person of numbers and logic.
Yeah, I like how he missed not being able to work, because it would take his mind off of his
You're-
present situation.
You're introduced to this fantastical, like, terrible environment in a very normal, everyday, like, you could see that as the start of, like, an indie film of, like, a down-on-his-luck dude, and if it wasn't for the fact that everybody was a zombie and everything is
Yeah.
dead. Like,
Hey man, how's your fifth arm treating you? Oh, good. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I have a third eyeball growing out of my you-know-what now.
all right, okay,
Yeah, but
that took a
that's
turn
ki-
and I didn't expect that,
Well,
but what I was trying to
that's
say
kind
is...
of what it would be like. That's kind of like maybe.
No, I was going to say the inverse was that I could totally see this as the start of like a man walking down the street in any other, like one of those love story movies where a guy gets depressed and is the down on his luck guy
yeah.
finds the girl and ends up with her in the end, and that's kind of what happened in here. Is that he meets a love interest and ends up with her in a very
Yes,
carnal
yeah.
way at the end of it. It was an intriguing.
And it was
Roller
just
coaster.
the way that he described things was just amazing.
Yeah.
The intercourse with one another, the particular body parts,
Yeah.
the status of each.
Too big.
Yeah,
particular
he
body
got very detailed.
Too young for
specific.
us.
That's the genre in itself.
Yeah. Could
Specifically,
I-
that's the horrific elements to it.
Yes.
I want to throw something on the table. Now, I'm sorry. Pun. Now, being that I got what I wanted on the table, pun. Could this be like a Cyanide and Happiness short? Those cartoons. I mean, I just got into that. Not really a fan, but you know, it's like.
I don't think cyanide. I think if I know what you're talking about,
Yeah, they're
those
those.
little
this-
stick figure drawings.
I don't
Yeah.
think they're not good enough.
No.
to be
I'm just
this.
that's not how I meant it. I mean, like how
Content-wise.
that's what I meant.
Yes,
Content-wise.
actually, on a very big.
A building comes to life out of something, or I don't know. I was just saying that's.
If I'm thinking of the right thing, cyanide and happiness seems like the most pointless thing I've ever come
It's a
across.
pointless
Well, thank
stupid
you.
thing, but they do have some random strips. I have seen some random strips where you're like, okay,
I'm not
I don't know where
you
this
know,
came from. Where it's that kind of, you're done looking at it and you're like, what the hell did I just experience?
You know, I mean, I'll admit some of
It
it.
mashes two things together that you think otherwise would not work, and sometimes you're like,
I mean,
okay, all right.
I
And
will.
that's-
I will say this. There, some of them.
Vaguely. That's
Yeah.
Vaguely. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You can throw me a bone, but
Yeah, sure.
yeah, but I'm saying that what you said, the content, like you know, the Suicide Stuntman. Okay, all right.
I'm not that well versed with them, but I was just saying,
honestly,
like,
neither am I. I just watched a few episodes, and I said to myself,
there's episodes.
Oh, yeah.
That I don't know.
there's a whole thing of episodes. Like I said, I'm not a fan. I'm not going to go out and buy the Cyanide Happiness T-shirt book stuff. I'm just, and again, if you like it,
on
go
a,
ahead. I don't
on
care.
a
But
strange, vaguely, I can
The
see
content.
connection. I can see that connection vaguely, but
all right,
yeah.
look what I started. I opened up a whole new can of worms. I'm sorry.
Anybody have any final thoughts? That were any
I think we've.
pleasant,
If anything says eat me, it better be food.
or was there more that we needed to get to?
No, I just, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pretty gory, and it was.
You like
cool.
gory things?
It was cool how, the storm kind of melded them together, and they were
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a weird kind of antenna.
I don't like
It
storms.
That
But,
was
uh,
quite something, and how it all concluded.
They were kind of fused
Yeah.
together forever,
Fused.
so they were consumed.
That's what a
entirely.
married couple,
So-
they become
They
one.
become
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
yeah,
it will
they
become
become
one
one.
flesh in all literal sense.
Wait, so that's how that happens?
So.
Yeah, a big storm comes in, breaks all the windows out of your
Usually.
apartment, and then you end up on the
Yeah.
roof. Yeah, that's exactly how marriage works.
I'm still in the stork theory.
In this
fellas.
post-apocalyptic world, yes.
Hey, honey, I'm on the roof.
Oh,
Hey, no.
I feel like Henry
Okay.
Morgan from the classic game shows this season.
I don't know why.
So it won the Bram Stoker Award, which is no small potatoes.
I think
love
that it's
potatoes.
deserving of that. It's
Yeah.
it's unique. to
It's
say the very
unique and it
For short story, I mean,
Yeah.
in a good
it
way,
was-
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it was clever.
I have not read anything quite like that. I will say it was one of those
Yeah.
things. Like I said, like I read it and it had me literally fixated in my spot as I was reading that, trying to figure out where it was going. And then when it ended, it was just one of those moments where I think I heard the heat kick in, and that's what woke me up from that reverie of like,
Your fries?
And it was very
Okay,
easy
what?
to read too.
yeah,
I've
it's
read
very
it.
accessible.
This is the third time I've read it, but once you read it, it stays with you.
See, I'm not a fan of horror and like gore and stuff like that. So when I started seeing like what it was about, I was like, I don't know. And then the more I got into it, like I said, it kind of wades you slowly into the topic instead of just like a smash cut, like somebody getting their arm ripped off. Like that's what was so engaging. Was it was very easily accessible.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of. I'm a fan of horror, but I'm not really like exactly a fan of gore. But
Yeah.
this hit its mark.
Yes,
That and the
yes,
splatter
it did its job very, very well.
Alrighty then. There are different outlets where you can find this. Where I have it, I got it from Zombies, Encounters with the Hungry Dead. This is a really intriguing collection. I'm planning to read this throughout when I get the opportunity. I'd love to see how each of these other writers approaches the topic of zombie fiction. There's both classic and more modern day horror and speculative.
I'm looking at
fiction.
the review on the back. It can be used for stabbing in heads. How massive this volume is. I just gave you all an idea.
Already done. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of Glory Gladiators. For now, keep reading.